Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we're digging into something that's been on my mind for a while: why eating healthy has become so confusing, and why, despite all the advice out there we've been given over the years, chronic disease is on the rise. We've been bombarded with nutrition advice from every angle, whether it's from the government, the media, or the latest influencer. But with all these recommendations, why does it seem like we're all getting sicker? Why, with all the focus on quote unquote healthy eating, are chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, obesity, and more continuing to skyrocket? It almost feels weird not to hear about someone having some sort of chronic disease or in doctor's appointments all the time. So, in this episode, we're going to take a look at how the government guidelines, like the infamous food pyramid, have shaped our understanding of what's healthy and what's not. We'll explore how these guidelines, once touted as the gold standard for nutrition, have actually led us down a dangerous path, contributing to the very health issues they were supposed to prevent. We'll also dive into one of the biggest nutrition myths of our time: the demonization of fat. For decades, we were told that fat was the enemy, the culprit behind weight gain and heart disease. But it turns out healthy fats are actually crucial for our well-being. We'll talk about how this misguided advice led to the rise of low-fat, high-sugar foods that have wreaked havoc on our bodies, and why embracing healthy fats is one of the most important steps we can take towards better health. I'll tell you before we even get started that this was a big part of my childhood. Like, everything was low-fat milk, low-fat yogurt, eating cereal, and maybe just a piece of fruit for breakfast. So now I truly embrace like full fat milk, full fat yogurt, cheese, and all that. So definitely took some time for me to even kind of unravel some of this and figure it out for myself. And so, if all that isn't enough, we also need to uncover the role of big food companies and even the tobacco industry in making our food more addictive and less nutritious, all in the name of profit. It's no wonder why navigating the world of healthy eating feels like trying to find your way out of a maze. I've been there, we have all been there, and they've made it very hard on us to try and figure things out. And it's on purpose, you guys. This is totally on purpose. It's all about their bottom line, and creating addictive food has created more profit for big food companies and ultimately then the healthcare system, with chronic disease being lifelong illnesses. So you need to keep treating them over and over, so the sooner someone gets sick, the more money that will be given to healthcare with all the appointments and procedures and medications. So it's sort of an endless cycle we're in right now. So stick around. Today we're not just talking about quote unquote healthy eating. I know we all want to eat healthy, but there are some nuances and complexities to this. So we're going to be cutting through some of the confusion so we can reclaim our health. We've got a lot to unravel, so let's get started. I'm Kaitlyn, and your host of the Glucose Glow-Up Show. I'm a natural researcher and girl mama who dove into metabolic health research to heal my insulin resistance, all with the hopes of growing our family. Now I'm here to give you an inside look on how I achieved my glucose glow-up and to share my journey with you so we all can achieve optimal health. I know we all want to be healthy, but with so much noise out there, it's hard to know where to start. Whether you're trying to start or grow your family, improve your fasting glucose or A1C, or just learn how I'm biohacking my health for longevity, you're in the right place. Let's get glowing. So topic 1, we're going to talk about why healthy eating isn't enough. I really believe we all want to eat healthy. And I'll be really honest, until I started this journey, I was really confused as to why obesity and weight gain and all of that was even an issue. I'm like, are people just lazy? Do they just don't want to eat healthy? And I have now come to understand that people just don't understand. They're confused, and the unhealthy, addictive food is quite honestly cheaper in most cases, not all, but it's convenient, and we've been conditioned in this modern lifestyle that the things at the grocery store are readily available, and if something's on sale or a better deal, like that's what we get. And we don't really understand what we're doing, because why would we question the people and the agencies that are supposed to be guiding us to healthy eating? So I'm starting to understand that people just don't understand, they're not educated, and it's quite honestly on purpose that we're being confused, and so that's why we're in this situation. So with healthy eating not being enough, I just want to explore kind of why it isn't as straightforward as it sounds. So depending upon your age and your background, when you grew up, your version of healthy eating might look vastly different from someone else's, especially mine. So for me, growing up in the 90s, the concept of healthy has seen some really dramatic shifts, and I was really stunned to realize just how much it's changed, especially from even my parents or my grandparents and all the things they've had to navigate. So when I talk to my grandparents, for instance, they don't fully understand what I'm talking about when I specifically around fat is something that they don't understand. I eat a very high fat diet. And so they were conditioned with the low fat diet. So I want to get into that a little bit. So this low fat craze, it was really a misguided movement. So if we go back to the early 90s, the low fat craze was in full swing. The government's advice at that time was very clear: fat was the enemy. And the infamous food pyramid had just made its debut, with carbohydrates promoted as a cornerstone of a healthy diet, while fats are demonized. So we're thinking you're probably eating Honey Nut Cheerios and maybe a banana with low-fat milk for breakfast. And we were told that cutting fat from our diets would be the key to preventing heart disease, obesity, and all these chronic health conditions that, so many of us are dealing with today. And of course, we're going to trust what they say. We swapped out butter for margarine, whole milk for skim, and we went with anything labeled low-fat, fat-free. It was just automatically healthier. So if you skimmed the store and you saw anything with fat or a high fat content, you just did not buy it. That was not a thing. You went with everything low fat. But here's the thing. That advice turned out to be really flawed. The low fat craze led us to replace fats with sugars and refined carbohydrates. And we had this in our head that it was a healthier option. Low fat, fat's going to make me fat. But instead of making us healthier, it really ushered in a wave of these ultra-processed foods hidden with sugars, artificial flavors, natural flavors, and all these chemicals designed to mimic the texture and taste that fats naturally provide. And the result was just an explosion of processed low-fat products, cereals, yogurts, and snacks that are just loaded with these sugars and additives. And they may have been lower in fat, but they were just really far from healthy. So the impact on metabolic health. What's truly alarming is how these low-fat, high-sugar products are marketed as the ideal choice for a healthy diet. And I want to reiterate here, the marketing side of this, we are just conditioned and almost, we don't even realize how we're being marketed to, but all of a sudden all you hear is low fat, it's all you see. Maybe it's on commercials, maybe it's on the packaging. It was on the government's food pyramid. And the food pyramid was a marketing tool. So you're conditioned without even realizing what they're doing. So these, low-fat, high-sugar products weren't just popular. They became these dietary staples for millions and millions of people trying to follow that best advice available. And that was the best advice available at the time. So, however, since we've learned, the consequences of this dietary shift have been devastating. These low-fat products often cause rapid spikes in blood sugar levels, followed by crashes that leave us hungry and craving more. And over time, this cycle contributes to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and obesity, which are exactly the conditions these products were supposed to help prevent. So let's take a low-fat yogurt, for example. Many of these products are packed with more sugar than a candy bar, yet they're marketed as a healthy breakfast option. Or consider breakfast cereals, labeled as heart healthy, Honey Nut Cheerios, anyone. They're full of refined grains and sugars that send our blood sugar skyrocketing first thing in the morning. And these foods were designed to appeal to our desire for convenience and health, but in reality, they've contributed to a decline in our metabolic health. So when you start off the day with a super high sugar yogurt with no fat in it, and then a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios with low fat milk, you're getting no fat to help kind of blunt the spike or slow the release of glucose into your body. So you're getting these really large spikes that you probably don't even know are happening until your blood sugar crashes and then you're hangry and you're almost eating like a second breakfast. I would guess that used to be me. I would have a bowl of cereal, and then by the time I got to work, I was hungry again, so I had a snack. So it's like loading up on carbohydrates is the exact opposite of what we want to do in the morning without the healthy fats along with it, of course. So the role of healthy fats, like we need to reclaim what we've lost here. So what should we be eating instead? The answer really lies in the very thing we were told to avoid, and that's healthy fats. Fats like those found in avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil, and fatty fish. They're not only delicious, but also essential for maintaining our stable blood sugar levels, supporting brain function, and reducing overall inflammation in the body. These fats help us feel full and satisfied, preventing overeating and snacking on the sugary foods throughout the day. Healthy fats are critical for so many aspects of our health. They play a role in hormone production, which is vital for everything from mood regulation to reproductive health. They're also crucial for absorbing fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, which support our immune system, vision, and bone health. And when it comes to heart health, healthy fats can actually improve cholesterol levels by increasing HDL, or the good cholesterol, and reducing the LDL, or the bad cholesterol. The shift from fearing fat to embracing it is a critical component of balanced diet and one of the most important changes we can make for our health. It's a shift that requires us to sort of unlearn the decades of misinformation and start looking at our food through a new lens, one that values nutrient density over calorie counting and quality over quantity. But as we keep going in this episode, you're going to see that making this shift is way easier said than done. There's just so many obstacles we're facing, so let's kind of get into that. So something I see is this sort of like lingering fear of fat. It's still kind of there. I think some of us are still kind of like, well, low fat like sounds better, right? Like it's that marketing component again. It just like sounds a little bit better than full fat, So despite everything we know now about the importance of healthy fats, that fear of fat is still lingering in our society, and many people continue to gravitate towards the low-fat products, believing them to be the healthier option, especially our older generations like parents and grandparents, depending upon how old you are. So the mindset is really hard to shake, especially when the marketing messages and outdated guidelines continue to reinforce it. It's really going to take some time and education and a concerted effort to change our relationship with fat and help people understand that not all fats are created equal. So one of the biggest challenges is just this deeply ingrained belief that eating fat will make us fat. It's an idea that has become so thoroughly ingrained in our culture that it can be difficult to see it for what it is. It's just a myth. The reality is that healthy fats are an essential part of a balanced diet and actually help with weight management by keeping us fuller for longer and reducing those unhealthy snacks. So if you think about anything you've had to change, like if you grew up thinking fat is the enemy, it's like going to be really hard for you to like undo that in your brain. So this is kind of what we're seeing now. Like some people are embracing it and others are not, depending upon where your family falls on that spectrum. Those might be some of your beliefs as well. How do we kind of move on, beyond the low-fat era? You sort of need to embrace whole, minimally processed foods that provide the nutrients our bodies need. So choosing full-fat versions of yogurt and cheese where the fat is naturally present and hasn't been replaced with sugar or artificial ingredients to make it taste better without the fat. It also means being mindful of the sources, so opting for plant-based fats like nuts, seeds, avocados, omega-3 rich foods found in fatty fish like salmon. So we also need to be wary of the term low-fat on food labels. Often when fat is removed from a product, something else, usually sugar or something artificial, is added to compensate, like I said, for the loss of flavor and texture. So by choosing whole, unprocessed foods, we can avoid these hidden pitfalls and ensure that we're getting the nutrients our bodies really need to thrive. Ultimately, overall, the key to a healthy diet isn't about demonizing one macronutrient over another. It's about balance. Our bodies need a mix of carbs, proteins, fats to function optimally, and focus on whole foods and healthy fats so we can create a balanced diet that supports long-term health and well-being. Okay, so now I want to kind of look more at the bigger picture and maybe like how we got here. So we've kind of unpacked why healthy eating is more complex and nuanced than it seems. So I want to zoom out a little bit and just kind of see our food system and how it's just riddled with issues that make it incredibly challenging for a lot of us to understand what eating healthy is. And one major factor is the immense influence that healthcare and big pharma have on our food system. There's a lot of money in treating chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and obesity, which means there's often less emphasis on prevention. After all, if we're healthy, who's going to buy all the medications, and what are the doctors going to bill for, and how are they going to get paid? But it's not just the healthcare sector that's problematic. Big food companies also play a huge role as well. They're experts at marketing, making us believe their products are healthier even when they're packed with sugar, artificial additives, preservatives, and more. How many times have you picked up a product labeled all natural or heart healthy, and then you kind of discover later on like it's really far from either of those things. With that, I want to talk about and highlight a recent episode that Callie and Casey Means were on, talking about a little bit about how we even got here in the food addiction and, how this happened with the food. And so they were talking about how in the 90s, people started realizing how smoking was bad for you, and, cigarette companies were facing some scrutiny, and so they had all this money because they made a ton of money from selling cigarettes, an addictive product to people. And so these companies took their money and they invested and bought food companies. So all those scientists that were making the cigarettes addictive, they just kind of shifted their efforts into food. So that is how we started on this train of really addictive food products. Major food producers developed a disproportionately high number of hyperpalatable foods, and this began between 1988 and 2001. And these foods were engineered to be addictive, combining sugar, fat, and sodium and carbs to create this artificially rewarding experience that you were eating, much like the cigarettes. They were designed to maximize their addictiveness. So there was a study that came out, and Forbes published this, and they said that the foods produced by tobacco-owned companies were 29% more likely to be classified as hyperpalatable due to fat and sodium, and 80% more likely to be ultra-high in carbs and sodium than were those produced by other companies. Even though tobacco companies largely divested from the food system in the early 2000s, their legacy really remains because they now have these hyperpalatable foods that have become this mainstay of the standard American diet, and it's contributing to obesity and chronic health issues across the board. It really doesn't end there. The tobacco industry shifted their lobbying power to influence our dietary guidelines. So, called the food pyramid, it was introduced as a tool to guide Americans towards a healthy diet. But what most people don't realize is that it was heavily influenced by these same food industry lobbyists. The food pyramid promoted a high intake of carbs and low-fat foods, which aligned perfectly with the products these companies were pushing and making. And they were designed to be addictive and very far from healthy. It's really sad and a little scary to see what was presented as nutritional advice. And it was actually this carefully crafted strategy to increase sales of processed and addictive foods. So there was this manipulation of our food system, and it's had these long-lasting effects, contributing to the rise of chronic disease and just really this overall confusion of why we're all here and trying to figure out what's going on. Another thing I need to mention is just like the global discrepancies in food quality. There's this issue of the stark differences between U.S. food products and those from other countries. I don't know if you know this, but the food we eat here in the U.S., some of them are banned in other countries due to harmful ingredients. Ingredients like artificial colors, preservatives, and even sweeteners allowed here have been deemed unsafe in other countries. And this double standard is really infuriating because why, if they can make it in Europe, why can't they make it in the US? So we just need to demand these better food standards. It makes no sense to me why I can't have, I don't eat a lot of cereal, really never. But if I want a bowl of cereal, why can't I have the same bowl that my counterparts in Europe or another country have? So very confusing, and it's like you can do it, so why don't you just do it in the US? I just want to talk a little bit next about like my wish list for a healthier future. And like what I would like to see, things that we should all be pushing and asking for. What changes do I wish to make healthy eating more achievable, accessible? So let's dive into a few areas that I'm really passionate about. First and foremost, I want to see organic food become more accessible and affordable for everyone. It's really frustrating that organic options are often priced out of reach for many people. Eating clean and nourishing our bodies with food free from harmful pesticides and chemicals should just be standard, not a luxury reserved for those who can afford it. I really believe that organic farming practices, which prioritize soil health, biodiversity, and sustainability, should be the norm. Imagine walking into any grocery store knowing that the food you're purchasing hasn't been drenched in chemicals and it's as close to its natural state as possible. To get there, we need policies that support organic farming, making it easier for farmers to switch and maintain to organic practices. This includes subsidies for organic farmers, better access to organic seeds, and more research into sustainable farming techniques. Okay, next, transparency from big food companies is crucial. We deserve to know what's exactly in our food without having to decipher these misleading labels and hidden ingredients. Have you ever looked at a label and felt like you just needed a degree in chemistry to understand it? I know I have. Terms like natural or wholesome are often used to mislead us into thinking we're making healthy choices, when in reality the product is filled with artificial ingredients, preservatives, and added sugars. We need clear, honest labeling that tells us what's really in our food and where it comes from. This means full disclosure of all ingredients, including any additives, and a transparent supply chain that allows us to trace our food from farm to table. It's really about creating a food system that respects us as consumers and prioritizes our health over profits. Next, removal of harmful dyes and additives and chemicals. We talked a little bit about this, but I think they just need to go away from our food. It's just like shocking the certain amount of ingredients that are banned in other countries, like they talked about, that are allowed here in the US. For example, artificial food dyes, which are linked to behavioral issues in children, are still commonly found in our snacks and cereals. It's time for a serious overhaul on what's allowed in our food, with a focus on removing anything that poses a risk to our health. This includes reevaluating the use of antibiotics in livestock and the overuse of chemical fertilizers and pesticides in agriculture, which can have long-term health effects on all of us. Another key change I wish for is more education and advocacy around food choices. Another change I wish for is just more education and advocacy around food choices. So this is really a big reason why I do what I do with Glucose Glow Up. I mentioned in the beginning that I've come to realize that people just don't know what they don't know. So if you knew some of these things, would you do better? Would you want change? Like, what would you do differently if you knew this? So I just want to bring to light some of these things that I know and I'm learning. I'm still learning. I'm going to keep learning so that I can share these things with you. So I'm going to be an advocate for you, and I hope that these things are helping you and you can share them with the people and really bring them into your homes so that you can start to create this positive change for your family and future generations. And lastly, I just want to see a shift in how we think about food. It's not just fuel, but it's also medicine. I have been getting in this habit where sometimes, I'm in this season where I need to rush. I feel like I'm always in a hurry and, we need to make food now. And I'm starting to kind of transition my brain to think like, creating the memories in the kitchen and making our food like an experience and a memory versus like trying to get through something as fast as we can because we got to get to the next thing or we got to do something else, like really making it an activity. Because we've all heard the saying, you are what you eat, but I think we really need to take it to heart. The food we consume has a profound impact on our health, and if we prioritize whole, nutrient-dense foods, we can prevent and even reverse many chronic diseases. So I think if we start to take the time to really learn, like I've said, like educate ourselves and then really like take a step back and like see food as medicine, and we're really investing in our health when we're in the kitchen or we're cooking with our families. So we're educated, we're using food as medicine, and we're creating those memories in the kitchen. So hopefully we can pass all of this on to the next generation so we can all access healthy foods and just everyone can thrive. So let's not stop there though. Like part of this journey is helping others recognize these issues and advocate for change. So I think we can all push for a food system that truly supports our health and not just the bottom line of corporations. We unpacked a lot today. I know that we've all been bombarded, like we said, with nutrition advice from every angle. We've looked at the government guidelines, nutrition myths, and just things that I would like to see for a healthier future for all of us in our metabolic health right now and future generations. So, in the meantime, we're going to keep digging deeper, we're going to keep investigating, but I have a free guide of 5 foods that you think are healthy that may be spiking your blood sugar into diabetic range, even non diabetics. So, what you're going to get is the list of 5 foods, why they spike your blood sugar, and if you do want to eat them, ways for you to eat them with more stable glucose levels. You're still going to probably see a rise in glucose like you should when you eat, that is totally normal, but it will minimize the impact of these foods and the spike that they can and probably do cause in most of us. So I will include the link to that guide in the show notes as well as a few resources that we talked about today. And I hope that you learned something today and can share this with someone until the next episode. Until then, keep on glowing.